the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. So, hey, everybody, welcome to Spirit Sessions podcast and
The Wild Temple.
Just to be super upfront, Brooke is an old friend of mine. We've been talking for a while before the show started. Brooke has just started her own podcast, and we may use this on both, but we're definitely using this on Spirit Sessions. Brooke is one of my favorite human beings, like legit, no doubt. She's also been with the Shakti School since day one. She is the official Tantric Herbalist. And I'm Katie Silcox. I am the founder of the Shakti School and the author of the new book, Glowworthy, which we're going to get into. And before we started talking, Brooke came to the interview super prepared with a list of ideas and questions and themes. And I think what is coming through for me, Brooke, is just this feeling of Sangha in the best of the meanings of that word. And the word Sangha is your spirit tribe, your community that you practice with. And Brooke and I have been Sangha sisters for over a decade. And that has absolutely nothing to do with a formalized brand of yoga or Ayurveda or meditation spirit practice. Sangha is that we recognize the light in one another and we see each other. And the other piece of it that I think that is always sparked when I'm with you in particular is just like, whoa, this chick is going deep in this lifetime. And so am I. And so like that recognition of like, she's on a train, there's no one stopping her, is the recognition of our sisterhood. And so I love you and I'm welcoming you to the podcast, but really I'm just welcoming you back into my view. Hello, Brooke.
Hello, beautiful Katie Silcox, who I have officially coined spiritual maven as of this morning, diving into Glowworthy. I've been searching for a different term than master, like having a mastery on something. And a maven comes from the Hebrew word maven, which probably is pronounced slightly different, but it means an extraordinary amount of knowledge or expert on something. And yeah, diving into your words in Glowworthy after your first book and, just knowing you for so many years, your ability to transmit the glow that you are into word form, embracing all of these spiritual concepts from different traditions as well as your own is a level of extraordinary. I'm humbled by. I'm so grateful to be part of your Sangha, and I'm so humbled by. Humble pie.
It's funny. I feel the same about you. And guys, listeners, we're not just going to like throw flowers at each other, but I think it's important too for the readers or the listeners to see this isn't pre-planned. Like this is legitimately what double goddess power looks like in action. Like I feel the same about you. Like when I read about what you're doing with your Wild Temple School, when I get the chance to hear your unique approach to herbology, I feel the same. There's this quality of like maverick and deep humility and indebtedness to tradition, full stop. Not just the tradition we happen to have studied a little bit, but like the deeper tradition that is any lineage that's been carrying presence and love throughout the eras, there's this real sense of like, well, maybe we can go into this first sort of idea from Tantric philosophy, which is the root mother tradition of what Brooke and I both study. And that is this idea of spanda. So contraction, expansion. And, it's bizarre to sit here. I'm literally sitting here knowing how much I have to do today, how much I have on my plate, puppies throwing up, a dirty house, like getting ready to take a trip, messy, messy, messy life, and feeling my irritation arise and watching that contraction. And then I sit down with Brooke Sullivan. It's like the sky parts, right? The clouds part. And there we are again, right back in the openness. And so one of the reasons that I wrote Glowworthy, and one of the like real initiations into this next level of tantric practice, is like really understanding the way that the thing that we think is bad or negative or a step backward is actually the portal into the next and bigger expansion. Thoughts?
Ooh, well, first you hit me right where it is. In all of the things, but I love the mess. Let's start with the mess. So this morning, as I was listening to Glowworthy, just so you know, for those listening, I have read most of the book, and this time I just listened to it, and it hit me in this whole new perspective. And as I'm listening, I'm making my breakfast, and I sit down, and I'm like, shoot, I better I know we're going to do this talk, and watch Katie is going to want to ask me more about herbs, and maybe I should just start thinking about what what am I going to say about this thing that is just such a piece of my life? How can I extract it into black and white word modality? And I pick up my bacon and I'm about to eat my bacon, and I saw there is a seed had floated, a little poof. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, where did this seed come from? It's, it's pretty midwinter, just onset of deeper winter. And, my doors have been closed, nothing's in. And I was like, oh shit, this is my absolute favorite plant. If I were to have a plant mascot, it's called fireweed. And fireweed is Epilobium angustifolium in Latin. And it is also known as, so in the West, we call it fireweed. In the more motherland and the luscious lands of the British Isles, it's known as rose bay willow herb. And in Russia, it's Ivan chai. So it's this black tea fermented that makes special Russian tea. But here it's known to be that which comes back from the mess, the disaster, the first thing to grow, to establish nutrients in soil from which all things can blossom. And it's just, for me, it's the logo of my Wild Temple School. It's the recognition that we are pain, brokenness, suppressed, intellectual, creatives, biological. We have all of these parts, and to isolate just the good and to try to spiritualize or box in just the holy purity of everything up here, not looking down under, does a complete disservice. And I really feel that the mess that you're talking about, Katie, is, it's that friction of being able to stand in the mess and still claim your wholeness or your holiness, or see the parts and feel the parts of you that aren't necessarily ideal or what you want to show up with today, and yet still have to deal with them in a manner of being the best version of yourself. So I just wanted to say, I see you, I hear you. I'm sorry that Ojas is puking, and
she's totally fine. It's just that that unmistakable sound of dog vomit we've all heard. that is one. She's totally fine.
Oh, chewing sticks or something.
Well, it's just they eat a bad treat or whatever. She's totally fine. But the feeling, and this is so, I think, relatable for our listeners, is the feeling inside of me when I have to interface with the mundane reality of like today I was like hanging up a jacket for like the 50th time this winter. You know, you put it on, I don't have a coat rack, you have to hang it up. And I just thought, if I have to hang this jacket and chop the garlic and chop the onions, and it's just the things we all do, like load the dishwasher. And, you know, I remember like the David Foster Wallace of like the and poor guy like ended up committing suicide. So it's like, it really does require that we see our resistance to and our even hatred of, and my inner feeling of irritability around the monotony and how good routine is for vata, for my nervous system. And yet there's this part of me that just abhors that monotonous material world. And I am capacious, and many of our listeners, and certainly you are, of like entering into the relationship with what feels like the sublime, right? And then coming back to like chop wood, carry water. It really is. And so I get that. And then the next stage is encountering what's there. And that's Tantra. The question is, what's the matter? That is the most tantric question you can ask, because what it's saying is, darling, what's the matter? What is here? What is here is the divinity that we start with. And so when I go into myself, I say, oh God, like what is here is irritability. And the old version of me, and she's still here, but I'm working with it a lot differently now, was like anger or irritability is the problem. And if I were more spiritual, or I were more cleansed, or I were more, you know, whatever, doshically balanced, I wouldn't have this. And the irritability is a sign that there's something wrong with me, wrong with my body, wrong with my mind. And now I'm at war. And now I'm in deeper contraction. And today, as I was feeling it, Brooke, there was a way that there was a sense that, yay, I get to come into a relationship with this thing that feels like the intolerable one and the unwanted one. I actually get to interface with it. And my quote system, whatever mind, body, spirit, whole koshas and chakras system, finally trusts me enough to hold it. And then, of course, and this is where like all the yantras come into play, the oppositional quality is the essence of Tantra. It's also Jungian, the tension of the opposites. I'm sure we can relate it, and I'd love to the herbalism of, on the other side of my worthlessness is my value. On the other side of my irritability is my peace. And on the other side of my overwhelm is my ease. And the way that these double goddesses are actually two sides of the same coin. So your approach to herbalism is so unique, because I think you understand through plants, they become the medium where that philosophical, and we could call it a philosophy, but really a way of seeing reality can be approached.
And feeling, you're right, waking up the love, the passion, the awe. I think that awe and inspiration are some of my biggest beautiful teachers. I'd like to go back to the bacon and my fireweed experience, because I really
always come back to bacon.
I feel that in light of this conversation that you just shared, you know, a lot of this is what we contemplate very similar ideas, right? And very similar issues, just being in this world, in this lifetime right now, and largely working with women and our own histories of tradition and religious suppression and trauma and all the blah, blah, blahs. But what I got from this seed, this fireweed on my bacon, was the unexpected. So here I was in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to prepare for this. I want to get organized in my thoughts. But I also knew I wanted to have this spaciousness for receiving what is and allowing the higher essence, love, beauty, truth, her, the divinity, come through in me. which I love at every moment to happen. And I can feel myself when I get into that sponda of constriction and expansion. When I get too heady is when I contract. And so the fireweed seed on my bacon was, I knew it was this mother intelligence giving me this moment of just do nothing, just be, everything is as it is in its highest form in your perspective and how you're seeing things. And so when we nitpick on the negative, or when we're myopic and we're just focusing on the problem, that's a contraction. But also when we're just focusing on the positive, that's a contraction, or it's an expansion that never stops. So we need that pulse, and to breathe in that pulse is, just one of the lessons of nature. And I feel that is one of the things when I come to the Shakti school and I'm offering Tantric Herbalism, is this understanding of the nature of power. And power inherent is life force energy, but is inherent in nature as breath, as the pulse, as the cycles of time and the cycle of a plant. And so when we are bringing in the plants to illumine our seeing, to exalt our awe and wonder of ourselves and the universe, it's that intention that then gets combined with our heart and our actions that enables an immense amount of grounded growth, which is really important, I think, in our work. Is like, we don't want to just expand. We don't want to just contract, but we need that grounded, the rooted expansion for the breeze to help us pulse. Yeah.
That's so funny. Like, going back to the bacon again, bacon is the quintessential, in many traditions, symbol of the taboo. And I'm imagining even people out there going, oh my God, these two supposedly spirit girls are eating bacon. And that's actually a deeper part of our relationship. When I told Brooke to eat meat when she was coming off a long fast or a cleanse, but the bacon being that representation of the taboo, and in Ayurvedic medicine, the tamasic, like the contracted, the darkness, the heaviness, and then the obviously plants and herbs being these very sattvic beings. I mean, within them, of course, there's more and less sattva and tamas and rajas, but I love what you said about positivity. Constant positivity is just constant expansion, and how unhealthy that is, and unwise that is. And in my own like inner practice, what I've been working with right now is staying open. And staying open is not the same as expanding. Openness has this bhavana of sweetness and compassion, like staying open to the way that I'm contracted and the way that now I'm not contracted, and how good that feels. And of course, usually you and I at least prefer that more open experience, but it's actually the ability, and this is like straight up Buddhism 101, to not get attached to those states of open or expansion and avoid the states of contraction. And when you really get that brilliance, it's like Einsteinian spirituality of like how succinct that packet of information is of non-attachment and non-aversion. Like, when you really get that, you still get to love people and have, like healthy psychological attachment. But when we really do feel the quality of non-clinging and non-rejecting, everything starts to get way more, interesting, right? Open. That's the word I would use.
Yeah. And beautiful and rich.
Beautiful. That's it. And magical and mysterious. And that's the divine mother. It's like everyone is asking us, Brooke, like, what is this divine feminine? I mean, I had even done a whole podcast on it. It's like at the end of the year, this year in level 1, which you were a part of, we do this last night ceremony, and it's so dense and beautiful. And like all these women that spoke that never spoke throughout the year show up. And then of course, all the people that spoke speak. And I was like, what's the central thing that all of these women are saying? And mind you, many of the women that come to the program can't even pronounce Ayurveda. Like they're new to all this stuff. And they're just having this like honeymoon phase that you and I had 20 years ago. And at the end of the year, they're like, divine feminine, the feminine, divine feminine, the feminine, divine feminine, the feminine. And I'm like, wow, these women are starving for just the permission to be able to tap in to what they are. We're not teaching anything. So it's hard to define the divine feminine, but how would you?
All right. I would say, and first, I'd like to just go into what you just shared, because I feel that there is, if we were to transplant this into nature, I feel that there is this rewilding needed in our culture, and especially in the female body. And, to pronounce Ayurveda, right, the science of life, or the art and the magic, the beauty, the alignment to attunement of life and nature, that is, to me, the divine feminine. This is our ability to be fluid, to be mavens, to be strong, to be fierce, to have all of the shapes and faces needed in a present moment to meet the moment as the moment is revealing to us. Unashamed, unabashed, indomitable. That is the ferocity, beauty, love, and kindness of the Divine Mother. And it's interesting, like I'm part of a spiritual tradition of Tantra that we were in just a little Sangha going over some really powerful lectures on the Shri Sukta. So this is the study of Shri and Lakshmi. And a lot of what was being shared was like this need to just love and be open and just, see the mass murderers and be able to still have compassion for them, and see and witness the people drugging women at a bar and still have compassion for them. And, I believe in the yes and but, where yes, I always see, I know that there is a divinity within everyone, and we're all here for a purpose. We all have unique lessons we have to learn from, but also things we have to do in this world to activate the world, right? However, a lot of times that I would say the closest to divine, the closest to God, is shrouded in people who lack presence, who lack understanding, who lack conscious awareness, but are also who are broken. And so the more we are broken, generational trauma, acute trauma, whatever it might be, sickness, illness, mental irregularities or abnormalities, all of these things can disconnect us from that divinity within us. But when we are seeing atrocities, or when we are seeing something so beautiful that it moves us, right? And here it goes back to expansion and contraction. We revolt or we revulse, and we contract or we expand through we love it or we're fawning, right? That's another issue with trauma. If we could just take off those garbs and instead embrace the divine aspect of the mother that can be fierce when she needs to be fierce, calling out a situation when someone is doing wrong with love, with a ferocity that they see, but with kindness and maybe nonviolent communication, right? So they can actually understand. Like that, to me, that capacity is so multidimensional and holographic. There's so many aspects here that it's a very feminine nature to have as a natural talent, right? If we were to exalt the regular mother who has 10,000 arms and is tending to the child, the pets, cooking 5 things in the stove and in the oven, and, doing taxes, all the things, like that capacity exalted is Divine Mother.
I feel like you just described my morning. I'm like, do you have a camera on my kitchen? And I think really highlighting that is important, to just take a moment and pause. Women out there, the 10,000 armed mother you may have said 10. I added a few thousand.
10,000.
10,000. 10,000 armed mother that hit me so hard. Just that is why the names of God are so important. And I hadn't heard it like that, at least in a long time, of like, I remember interviewing, I'm going to get teared up thinking about Indu, one of our other teachers, and talking about the divine feminine. And she was like, this is what is misunderstood. Women don't need to be empowered. We are her. We do it. And of course, let's not derail this by talking about gender, but like, of course, men can do this too. But that innate 10,000 armed mother that reaches her arms out to serve and create and remedy, and that is a divinity, is something that is so fundamentally lacking in the psyche of so many people on the planet. And I don't even want to make this a Western East. Those words don't even mean anything anymore. We're a global community. But the idea that mother could in and of herself be something holy, that doesn't even enter the psyche, for so many. And so I think just letting, and I don't have any biological babies that have come out of my body. And I think if I had, and I think I have many, many, many lifetimes of that, but like, I think that just adds a whole nother level to the humble sacrifice. And I remember when I first met you, and I think about this often, actually. I mean, not often, but it comes from time to time, even though you're not in my presence. You were describing an experience of your body really changing in some interesting ways energetically. And just the way that our whole reality starts to take on a different quality as we enter into the function of the 10,000 armed mother, whether it be a physical baby or the things you described. And I think that's really what, on a spiritual level, translates for me in terms of subtlety to the capacity to honor not just women, but everyone's holy journey that's enacting itself as a function. In other words, bottom up. In other words, like for me, as you know, I don't really study with any particular group anymore because the Shri yantra has actually possessed me, if you will, and is now revealing itself to me through Sahaja Yoga, which means spontaneously. And so that to me really is this sort of thing that I was trying to get my words around, of just honoring the intuitive faculty when you give people the right technology. And that's a subtle dance, because sometimes we think it's our intuition and it's not, right? And we're going down an old neural pathway. And so that might bring us into an interesting kind of place around what you and I love, which is studying old things and learning about tradition. And then like the absolute wildness of life.
Yes. Yes. Your Sahaja Yoga is my mother nature. So nature is what spontaneously erupts within me, divinity, and it's love, and it's absolute clarity, and it's absolute knowing that comes from ancient knowing. It's the awakening from the cultural amnesia of the suppressed woman or suppressed divine feminine and suppressed divine masculine, honestly.
It's all bad. Yeah. Like that's so important to say again. Like this whole conversation we've been having for a decade needs such an update, because through interfacing with men, I'm realizing one of my Jungian professors was like, I'm a PhD school dropout, and I did this like incredible semester of Jungian psychology. And one of the professors was like, it's not just the feminine. The masculine is immature, and so is the feminine. He called it the matured feminine and masculine.
Oh,
isn't that beautiful?
I like that. I love that.
Sorry, go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, well, I just think of like mater with the matured, so there's even like a mother of this. Like we are coming into our ideal mother, right? If we're looking at like parts theory or EMDR, right? We are recreating the ideal mother to learn how to tend to ourselves by embracing the ability for people of any gender or non-binary to step into a maturation, a maturity of self, which is honestly, it's a remembrance. Like Indu said, we don't need to be empowered. We are empowered, but it's true. We do need to uncover the blocks from that power. And I'd love to go back to I think it was the initial chapters, maybe it was even the beginning in your Glowworthy, how you're talking about when you are at war with parts of yourself, right? The blocks prevent you from spiritual growth. And I've always seen this and felt this, and especially with my time working as a midwife and with women that go into psychosis, and people who on the path of Kundalini yoga or Tantra go into psychosis is often due to the blocks of this sacred womb space or the sacred penis, right? Whatever it might be that blocks that sensuality, the love, and that prana from moving through. And when that is blocked, we can't emerge as a society. We can't emerge into wholeness. And we have so much shame and so much brokenness around sexuality and sensuality. And, when you turn to nature as teacher, nature is all sex. Plants are plant sex, and like, it's amazing to watch the squirrels chase each other. And I've seen, I don't know if I told you this, lightning bugs making love on a hydrangea. It was it was like to Al Green, slow sensuality. I was like, this is amazing.
Oh my God. So, this is so interesting. Well, obviously we have a lot around female and feminine form sexuality in the school. And we've got this amazing like sexological body worker that comes and teaches our women about their anatomy and how it takes, spoiler alert, all of you guys should join the school and meet Chris Muse. But she talks about how the clitoris actually needs 45 minutes. The whole area needs up to 45 minutes of stimulation to even begin to be ready to have sex or to become engorged for pleasure. Like, how many women are getting that amount of foreplay on their sacred sexual organs before penetration? I mean, we're taking it to a whole nother level, but like
other body parts, like
the breasts, exactly. The armpits,
armpits have so much sensual nerve in them.
The lower back and all of these areas of secrecy, they were secrets because this is where we go to open these portals. But going even deeper, there's an old tantric story about you may have heard this, Brooke, through our mutual first teacher, but this woman goes to the guru in India in the middle of the woods, this tantric guru, and she knocks at the door and she's like, may I be your student? And of course he rejects her, and the story goes on and on. She keeps bringing him all these different gifts. And finally she brings him this picture of Shiva and she takes a dump on it. You are now ready to be my student. Like, you get it. And I was out walking my dog yesterday, and Ojas, my puppy, just takes this poop right in the middle of, the road on the grass. And I just looked down and I went, she has no shame. This dog is literally squatting in this weird position, taking a poo, and like just gets right back up and starts moving her butt and jogging down the road with me. And I'm like, first chakra, second chakra, third chakra. There's so much shame and guilt. And I think obviously we all don't need to start going and taking poops on the side of the road without shame. I think there's a service to the sort of taboos, but I think on a spiritual level, when we're meditating, we're going to meet all of these parts, if you will, and being able to see even the shittiest parts of our body or ourself as holy is the name of the game. And there's a reason it's called a sword edge. This can go wrong and does go wrong so often. And I think that's why for me, it's been profound to really make it super personal I know we don't have a ton of time left, Brooke, and I really do want people to hear about your unique approach. How do you take all of this vast wisdom and subtlety and nuance? Like what makes something a tantric herbal class?
Mm, mm.
Like as opposed to any old herbalism style?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'll try to answer that. Let's see.
You're like,
There-
let's go back to bacon. No.
We can go back to the bacon. And really the taboo, I think that that's a part of it. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of things that I could say about this, where one, I would share with you that, I first started as a naturalist, making little worlds in shoes and buckets as I was a child. My mother was a willow tree. I hung out under this willow tree, and I remember the first time I was ever trapped in anything. It was a burdock patch, and my hair was all tangled in. And so I got to be stuck there, just like sitting with myself for hours as a 5-year-old. Yeah, that was pretty intense. So battling my fears and all the stuff in this experience. And what I feel I always go back to, because the world never made sense to me, but nature did, is that I have to go back to nature to make sense of myself, the world, life, my growth, all the things. It's natural in me. And yet I also know the experience of having forgotten it. So I had a pretty intense childhood where I wound up running away at the age of 15, and I lived in concrete jungle. And so completely disconnected from nature and my body and all of the things. I was self-medicating with lots of drugs and really broken. And so my time with yoga was simultaneously coming back to nature and my wholeness. And so it's been a parallel study where I see the teachings of yoga embedded in the trees and in the plants. And you were saying at one time, I shared with you energetic shifts that were happening in my body. When I first met you, I was deep in the throes of really first meeting a plant one at a time. So I was sitting by the sunflower, meditating with the sunflower, imbibing in the sunflower, flower essence, eating the seeds, all of the things, experiencing this relationship in a way that I knew there was no other. It's just this being in me. And the teachings that I received from the sunflower were incredible, of ways to shift into a sense of confidence and radiance within myself so that I could show up better in the world, to just all kinds of things. The trees, like sitting with the aspen groves and recognizing this connection, feeling this connection, yet having this one mother that is divine and a part of me and all of my different aspects. So another version of the ideal mother. So I think this, like, how did I come about it? One day at a time, really naturally, and also like a nerd, totally diving into the texts. I've been so lucky to have studied with the most amazing teachers all across different cultures and traditions, and sitting at their feet. I find that I learn best from the feet of the plants and the feet of my teacher. It's, better than books. And yet I'm also a book nerd. But where I really started to weave it all together and where it started to make most sense was in teaching and into the actual sharing and being with my community of students and colleagues and just bringing them out. And we're all meeting the plants together. And then the dialogue that is a result of that meeting. And it was always so filled with wonder and awe, because no matter what one person's knowledge was or wasn't, when we sat with the plant and received who they were, it was uncanny. We were all getting the same message.
One of my dreams is to do this work with you one day, and maybe we will, but in a more like non-Zoom setting. But we are doing the same thing with the energy work, with the chakras, and allowing the images and sounds to emerge from the chakras, rather than going into the chakras and putting sounds and symbols, which is fine, but that's a different way. It's like the book nerd. You read about the plant versus just being with the plant. And what I find, it's uncanny when you lead women or men who've never even thought about this, who don't even know what a chakra is, who are like, wait, I'm taking my attention where? And you just give them some roadmaps, and lo and behold, everyone's like, it was kind of red and like more like burnt amber. And I had a dragon, and I had a snake, and I had a this. And like, there's no right or wrong answer, but suddenly you're like, whoa, dragon energy, lava, volcano, earth, tentacle. You're just like, this is the first chakra. It's primal, it's reptilian, it's the reptilian brain. And sure, we can also talk about the physiology of that, but like, when you just give people some very gentle tools, wisdom comes out of their bodies. And interestingly, and this is sort of where subtle medicine starts to take root, like, maybe it's blue down there. Why would it be blue? Because they need it to be blue. You know what I'm saying? Like, you start to see how, just as when you open up an anatomical structure, no one's body looks like a cadaver that you would see on, your health school mock-up. Everybody looks different. It's the same with the energy body, right? And maybe when you're meditating with the plants, it's like, this is what the sunflower was for me. And we can see these threads of continuity, but then that's the magic and mystery of the personal journey. The unique medicine comes through, which is simultaneously personal and universal. And that's what makes something, in my opinion, like a holy moment, like a God moment. Jung said, it's both deeply personal and completely universal at the same time. And that convinces the soul that it's true.
Mm, mm, mm. Ooh, and I love to add to this, where I think what you're doing in Shakti school and I'm doing with my Wild Temple school are really giving voice to these roadmaps. So if the roadmap is the tantric methodology, it's beautiful. There's a system there. There's a methodology that really works. However, each person's journey is slightly different, and what is emerging from that is slightly different. But the roadmap is both science and spirit, and elusive and not, right? It's all of those pieces, as equally as herbology. So herbology has a science. There are medical constituents in a plant that have particular effects on our body, on our physiology, but also in our psyche, as well as the consciousness of the plant itself and the natural world. If you could learn the language of nature, that is another roadmap. So
that's a deep practice.
Yeah, and that's part of what I teach. So even in Shakti school, it's like bringing in, here are ways that we can get in, because I think that the problem and I'm noticing that this, I think, is a problem that I sought to understand from the very beginning, is what are the structures that'll hold me? How can I navigate this way in a way that it can still be personal and not a cookie cutter experience? And so the structures of herbology or tantra in practical or mystic ways offer that experience that the person isn't lost and not overwhelmed.
Shakti needs structure to flow. Prana needs structure to flow.
Yeah.
You and I both know the feeling of unbridled prana.
Ooh, yes.
So, I mean, this is such an annoying question to end on, Brooke, but I think it's good, and I would want to know it myself. So one of the things that we do in Shakti school is to meditate with a plant and just hold it in our hands and really let it speak to you. And what are some of the practical things that people could start with right now, and maybe relating it to winter? What are some good, let's say three herbs, or, I know that's like, oh, what are your top 3 herbs for winter? But that really is the question that our listeners will have. And then how can they relate to that in a way that is not just take the tincture, put it in your mouth, or take the tea, or take the herb?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, off the cuff, I would say maybe find some seeds. Right. And you can meditate, like just that one experience of this little floaty that flew through my house from a bag that I held of fireweed seeds. It came from the cabinet, had to have. So this floating seed, I was gazing at it on my bacon. Let's bring it right back to the bacon.
It always comes back to bacon.
Always comes back. But I was noticing the strength and the potential within the tender almost elusive nature of this seed. So it had dark center, dark like container of a seed, but around it were its little tendrils to fly and to touch, like experience the world, right? So it needs to find its place. Where is it going to land? And if we look at different kinds of seeds, perhaps you have seeds that you're going to plant or even bulbs. Maybe you have fennel seed, cumin seed. Just start to taste them. Have like all kinds of, I believe in creative inspiration. I'm a biggest fan of creative inspiration. What kind of meditation will really jazz you up, right? So having a taste meditation, tasting cumin and sitting with it, having a smell, working with organoleptics and getting into the different sensory nature of memory and what does cumin seed evoke within you, to actually just looking at it or feeling into the potential of what a seed in you at this time of year can bring to the year 2024. So that would be one thing. Another thing I would say is full force kitchen alchemy. This is the time of year where we are in the Northern Hemisphere more drawn to our stoves and our ovens. So I would use this time, work with nature to actually start cooking, to alchemize things and understand when you are spiritualizing a soup, you are bringing all of the plants together that they can have this dance in the pot to start to unite to create this new thing. And you can chant, you can meditate, you can just, again, use your senses to what is this in you that is mirroring the macrocosm, the external world mirroring something within you. And you can get a lot of guidance from that. Just do some, constant, or what is it called? Stream of consciousness, journal writing afterwards. So that's two. The third one I would say is if you can bundle up and it's not rainy. I know our people in like Scotland, Ireland, and the more moist places of Europe, I would tree sit. It's the perfect time because if hopefully in your life you're slowing down a little bit in this hibernating time, again, Northern Hemisphere vibes, you can take the time to listen to a tree. So it might take days for a tree to speak to you. It might take hours. It might just take a constant revisiting. So in our school, we do, and in my apprenticeship, I guide people into just 10-minute sits with trees and really connecting with the tree as a way of rooting and having an anchor throughout your day or week. And the trees are incredible medicine. They are some of our most profound allies and ancestors. You can learn a lot from trees.
Wow, so beautiful, Brooke. This is why we bring you in every year. Thank you so much for hopping on the spirit sessions with us. It's a great way to start the new year, is to be with you. And yeah, I can't wait for your class.
Thanks, Katie G. Yeah, I look forward to leading a retreat with you.
Let's do it. Okay, it's officially on the podcast, so they're going to write my staff. Yeah, that would be amazing. Lots in the pipeline. Thank you, Brooke. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.